Welcome to the Probate Realtor Show, your one source for selling and buying real estate through trust and probate. Hear directly from the best attorneys and trusted advisors on how executors and administrators navigate the probate process in and out of court. Being a personal representative or successor trustee can be a daunting task, and often beneficiaries don't have a clear plan. Let us help you make the right decision for your clients, your family, and your legacy. And now, here's your host, the probate realtor himself, Matias Baker Masucci.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very exciting episode of our show. Today, we are talking to Lisa MacCarley. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me this morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa is an attorney, and not just that, she's also a guardianship and conservatorship reform activist. So we are going to get into this. This is such a very important topic. People that had never heard of what a conservatorship was, they became aware of it through the Britney Spears case. And Lisa was directly involved in making the changes and bringing about a resolution or making being part of the process. So we are going to be talking about that. Before we get into that, let's help our audience who is not familiar with what a conservatorship is understand. Lisa, what is a conservatorship?
Well, a conservatorship in its simplest format is when the court appoints a competent adult, let's say, to look after the welfare of a person that has been deemed incapacitated or otherwise unable to make good decisions on their own behalf. There's many different forms of conservatorship, too many to go through in this podcast, but basically, the type of conservatorship that Britney Spears and many other elderly people are caught into is what we call a probate conservatorship. And there's conservatorship of the estate, which allows another adult or even sometimes an entity or charity to make decisions for the financial welfare of an incapacitated adult. And then there's conservatorship of the person, which is when the court appoints someone to make healthcare and housing decisions for another person.
So I think that as with everything that has a lot of power, there must be abuse in that arena. So what I wanted to talk to you about, and this is a topic that you aptly suggested to us, is the documents that somebody can prepare in order to avoid being put in a conservatorship when it's not necessary. So let's talk about that. What are these documents?
So being very honest, there is really nothing that you can sign or do that would 100% guarantee that you won't end up in a conservatorship, because we can't forecast how your family may respond, their relationships, but every adult should participate in what I call the team sport of staying out of probate court and conservatorships directly. Every state in the nation has created through legislation what is called a durable power of attorney, which is how people can designate who they want in advance to make financial decisions for them. And in California, we have advanced healthcare decision proxies, basically, or advanced healthcare directives, which allows a competent person to review who they want to assign the duty and the rights and responsibilities to make healthcare decisions for them. I urge every adult, whether you're 18 or 80, to please make sure that you have these documents in place. They are available on the internet. If you Google the state that you're in, California, statutory power of attorney, California, statutory healthcare directive. They're very simple, very straightforward. You don't need to have an attorney, but that doesn't hurt. If you want some assistance, I urge every adult, if you have a driver's license, if you can read, if you understand, and also it's actually written in many different languages in California, please, I urge you, do everything you can to stay out of probate court, and especially out of the very broken system known as conservatorships in California. Those are the documents.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And you know what? So the basically, if I understand it correctly, is the fact that none of us can predict whether we'll ever be put in a conservatorship or not, because you don't know that. I mean, you can have a car accident, you can be a vegetable, whatever the story may be. But what you can do is decide in advance who will be in charge, and that is huge. You are absolutely right. You cannot cannot prevent it, but at least you can decide who is the person who will be in charge, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the courts do respect documents. And I use the phrase kind of weather documents. So if you're competent, let's say you're 60 years old, I'm in my 60s now, I've executed these documents. So 10 years from now, if I have an accident, the court will say, well, clearly Ms. MacCarley was competent when she was in her, when she signed this. So they will tend to go along and respect those documents, as opposed to documents that are created in a hospital or after some tragedy or calamity. So I urge everyone, even though you may think that there's never going to happen to you, the court is filled with people being conserved because they didn't think it was going to happen to them. The other thing that seniors especially can do is please sit down with your children. Please sit down with your closest family members, especially if you have children from a first relationship and remarried or involved with someone else. Those conflicts tend to erupt, and it is hideous to watch how people will begin to fight over who has the right to control and make decisions for you. So I say, get your statutory power of attorney and healthcare directives signed early and often. Review them, make sure that you have picked the right people. If your children don't like each other, probably not a good idea to pick a child. If you have a niece or a younger relative, sibling, that might be a better choice. There are people that absolutely have no one because they've immigrated from other countries and maybe spent most of their adult lives by themselves. Call an attorney. We can help. We can help you find someone, probably locally, who is capable, licensed, trained, and bonded, certified to be able to help you as you get older. I say it often. Please, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your family to stay out of conservatorship court, most especially. So thank you for this opportunity for me to remind people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great because actually my next question, I was kind of going to connect it to what we are talking about, which is selecting the right person. And I wanted to talk to you about professional fiduciary, then who the court may appoint, etc., if there's nobody that you selected. But how do you, I think you touched upon it a little bit about advising your clients, if your children don't get along, don't do this, don't do that. So just to go a little bit into more details, how do you advise your client to select the person? When is it a good idea to hire a neutral third party professional?
Such a great question. Thank you so much for asking. The first thing that I would recommend to people, if they have a capable, responsible relative of a younger generation, that would be my first choice. Children, if they get along and if they are basically self-sufficient in some way, demonstrating that they are responsible already for themselves at the very least. Nieces, nephews could be a good choice. Your cousins' children, often referred to as second cousins, but they're not. They're actually first cousins once removed. Little information, trivia I'll throw in there for you. So a younger person in your life who has demonstrated that they are responsible and caring and somewhat involved with the family, that would be my first choice. I ask you to please avoid neighbors or people that are friends that are of your same age, because chances are as you age, they will age also. Your friends love you and they will probably say, yes, of course, put me down as a decision maker, but they'll probably face the same medical family issues. Not a great choice for most people. In terms of when you need a professional fiduciary, I've had families where there has been a long history of mental illness or substance abuse, and that would be the time that we would look for professional fiduciary. And mostly, I would refer people to 2 or 3 that I know, that I've worked with, that I've had experience with, for example, and ask them to interview in advance and see if it's a good fit. Like with many other professionals, personality and how you vibe with someone is the most important criteria. Some people prefer men, some people prefer women, some people prefer local. And so just like any other profession, attorneys, accountants, professional fiduciaries come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes, ages, and so forth. So they are out there. There's, I think, at least 1,000 people in California. But the way to access that right now would seem to be to speak to a local attorney and see if they can give you 2 or 3 names of people that they've worked with. Most of us in the industry where we've routinely appeared in probate court and we routinely have to deal with these difficult problems will know people that are suitable and who chances are you'll like and trust to be at least named. And I try to always name someone as a backup. So there are families where they have cousins, relatives, and everything seems to be okay. But I urge people, like, you don't know how life is going to unravel. So try to have a professional fiduciary as your number 4 spot. Some backup, do everything you can. Again, stay out of probate court. And so that would be my advice to people. Look for someone who cares about you, of a younger generation. And then if that you look around, you're not really comfortable, then speak to an attorney in your neighborhood. And everywhere there's estate planning attorneys who would be able to provide you with referrals to professional fiduciaries who could step in and at least be a backup for you.
That makes total sense. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, you practice in areas of elder law as well as probate. So what the areas are, relatively vast. You go from the estate planning portion, if people come to you with that needs. I don't know if you do specifically estate planning as well, but starting with that. So my question, I guess, is how has your practice over the years, and now you've seen practicing in those areas, informed your interest in setting the record straight when it comes to conservatorships?
So, again, you're asking these brilliant questions. So when I went to law school, I already knew that I wanted to be a probate and conservatorship attorney. I'm probably very unique in that.
Yes, you are.
When I went to law school, I went, in the 80s, pretty much is when I started. There really wasn't a lot of talk about probate and conservatorships, but I was mentored by attorneys that had some insight that there was going to be a lot of people aging as baby boomers. I'm considered to be a very young baby boomer, but still within that generation. And so clearly the scheme was that people were going to be aging. When I started, I thought that what I would be doing is primarily protecting people by using the court system to provide safety for elders. Never in my wildest dreams when I started law school did I imagine that I would be actually advocating and trying to educate people about the problems and the dysfunction and really some of the cruelty that is happening even as I speak with respect to conservatorships. The big problem that I see is that the court systems, and this is throughout the country, not just California, not just LA, we are woefully underfunding government agencies or entities. Like schools are underfunded, court system, which is funded by the government, underfunded, the government is underfunded. And so what that leads to is lack of supervision, lack of accountability, lack of training of people that show up, including judicial officers, to make decisions. And what happens then is that the judges sort of create their own rules or their own policies and procedures that, in my opinion, undermine justice. And the biggest problem I have right now with LA County is that the judges are running the legal services program so that basically judges are picking, appointing, and paying attorneys, some of which are their favorites. And that undermines justice in so many ways.
True.
I didn't foresee that. So now when I talk to people about conservatorships, because it may be inevitable, mom or dad didn't do estate planning documents, for example, and now they are too incapacitated. And I hate to tell you how much that happens, in spite of my pleas for people to get these things done. What I have to do is actually tell people that the system itself is so broken, it's going to feel terrible. Like, is this really protecting my beloved elder? There's financial exploitation. There are misrepresentations being made by attorneys. So I actually have to warn people about the dangers of what they are about to get into. And most especially, I hate to even say this, but my colleagues do tend to want to make money in conservatorships. So they will sometimes the attorneys that are appointed to protect or represent the interests of incapacitated adults are the ones that are committing the elder abuse, in my opinion. And honestly, I didn't see that coming, but I feel like I would be remiss when I counsel people. And when I always, about conservatorships, we've explored every alternative. We've explored different ways to avoid conservatorships, but when it's inevitable, I have to tell people this is not pleasant. It's not going to feel fair. It's going to feel like it is a different type of predation, because unfortunately it is. It's very expensive and out of control, especially in LA County. And this isn't going to help, but in other counties, some of the judges are aghast at what happens in Southern California. I've interviewed judges in Northern California who are watching, and they're like, some of these fees that are being paid to court-appointed attorneys by the courts are outrageous. And that's what I didn't see that coming, honestly. And that's why I advocate for reform primarily.
That makes total sense. This is a topic that has come up during the show on other episodes, even when people talk about inheritance, who you leave your assets to. And the question is that if you don't make the decisions when you can, the court will make the decision for you, which is kind of what we're talking about here, is the fact that you have to be proactive, because once you're in the system and once you have not made that decision, when somebody else will make the decision for you, you are gambling. I mean, you could find the most amazing judge in the world who's going to be very caring and very careful as to what happens. But if you don't, you're letting the decision up to someone else. So this is not just about this. This is about many other things that have to do with our judicial system in the United States. So thank you for talking about that. Now, to shift the topic, but stay on the same topic. Basically, you're writing a book on the Britney Spears conservatorship. So let's talk about that. Let's talk what spurred that decision and how is the process going and where you're at and when can we expect to read the book?
All right. So my 15 minutes of fame was started when I got a call from a gentleman that was a Britney Spears fan. I loved Britney Spears, but seriously questioned the need for why is she in a 13-year very secretive conservatorship. And I remember the day I showed up and there was maybe 24 young people loving Britney, saying, why is she in a conservatorship? And I'm in a state of depression like many adults because of COVID, and the world is shut down, and there were so many things going on that were very scary and disturbing. So at this first rally, I was handed some documents and they said, could you look at these documents and tell us, does this seem right to you? Do these seem like court documents? And much to my shock, dismay, and surprise, I found that there was an attorney who had shown up, retained by Britney to represent her. And that during the very first proceeding, which was on February 4th, 2008, Britney was denied the right to have legal representation of her own choice. And I remember being astonished because this was all very secret. Like, we all knew about the Britney Spears conservatorship, and we knew the attorneys, but it was kind of secretive, and she's a celebrity. And I really didn't pay that much attention because it was not my interest at that point. I figured everything was going the way that Britney wanted it to go. I had no idea. But I was very, very surprised, and I immediately pointed out that this was a violation of due process for Britney Spears, a violation of her absolute right to be represented by an attorney of her own choice. So from that, I started explaining to the young people that showed up that they were absolutely right. So the movement called the Britney Spears movement went from being a sort of fan base, and Jamie Spears said it was a conspiracy theory, to actually being a very legitimate, legally sound argument. Britney Spears did not belong in a conservatorship in any way, shape, or form. So over the last 4 years, I've been following the case, attending hearings, and for the Britney Spears fans out there, if you follow me on Twitter or on Insta, you know that I'm very sad to report that she did not get justice. And my book is basically the tale of the beginning of the conservatorship, what was done to violate her constitutional rights. And sadly, in spite of what I would say my best efforts in engaging with her present legal counsel, Britney Spears is still not getting justice. And I think people need to know about what was done to her, what she was deprived of, and why I feel this way. And I think many of my colleagues, when they read the book, will understand that Britney could have been vindicated in many other ways. So the book is not about Britney Spears per se, but more about what was done to Britney Spears over the course of, say, February 2008, although I do touch upon her family law case, which was also an abomination, but going forward to this day, and of course, ending with every prayer and hope that Britney can somehow find justice, peace, and love, and be comforted in knowing that the world came to stand behind her in this injustice. So the book is basically the story of the 4 or 5 years, and also kind of engaging with how I know these attorneys, how I know the judges involved, and other cases that are similar but different. Because what happened to Britney was obviously not just Britney. It's happening and has happened to other adults as well. So I'm trying to get this honed down by the end of June. I've taken time off. I've scheduled vacation time, but it's really downtime to write and finalize the book now that Britney's case is being wrapped up. So that's hopefully will be out this summer. I'll make a good summer reading. And by the way, I also have a chapter on escaping or preventing being put in a conservatorship.
Oh, very nice. Thank you. And you know what? You touched upon it as you talked about it, but this is something that I want to give my audience this information. Obviously, if Britney Spears case came to prominence, it's because she's famous. All the other people who are not famous, who you never hear from, may have undergone similar situations, but unfortunately, they don't have a fan base. They don't have anybody who cares. So, you know, it's interesting. You have to do something within the system. Obviously, I don't have enough information on the case to pass any judgment, but people like you who are familiar and are attorneys that have an opportunity provide a service for the community without a doubt. Lisa, before I let you go, I want to ask you something very important. If somebody needs your help, and if somebody wants to buy the book, and if somebody wants to find out more about what you do, tell my audience, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
So the best way, to be honest, is to email me, simply because I'm not always able to get to the phone because of court appearances. My email address, very straightforward, lisamaccarley@gmail.com. I try to respond as much as possible. You can call me. My number, 818-249-1037. 1200. I'd love to hear from also other attorneys to talk about probate and estate planning, but I would love to hear from members of your audience. And if you are listening, reference this podcast, this show, and I'll give you a discount of 10% off of any legal work, including probates. I think statutory fees are too high. I think there's a lot of discounting that can happen. So if they reference you, I will most definitely give a discount and reference the June 6th podcast, and I'm happy to help. And I often do respond with emails with questionnaires and other documents, but absolutely, it's a team effort. So even if you don't have any money, call me, we'll work it out.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, audience, if you reach out, tell Lisa that you found out about her on the Probate Realtor Show, and she will take excellent care of you. Lisa, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to spend some time with you. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Probate Realtor Show. Find more episodes and interact with us at probaterealtor.la. That's probaterealtor.la. Listen, ask questions, and get results. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The Probate Realtor Matias Baker Masucci is a licensed real estate broker in California, DRE number 020547763. Any legal information provided is for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing legal advice. Contact an attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal issue or problem. We make no guarantees as to the accuracy of any information. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.